I am so happy to make this video because I get to talk about my favorite movie in the whole world, History of the World Part 1. I saw this movie when I was a kid in middle school and I loved it. It was my favorite movie of all time. I loved Mel Brooks. I wrote Mel Brooks a fan letter asking him to make History of the World Part 2 after I saw History of the World Part 1. And now 35 years later, History of the World Part 2 is finally coming on Hulu. I guess the mail was kind of slow. Look, I love Mel Brooks. He's like the uncle I never had, and I'm going to tell you that I actually had a chance to meet him in my 20s. And if you wait till the end of this video, I'm going to tell you the story of when I did get to meet him and his wife, Anne Bancroft. But don't skip ahead to the end of this video because now it's time for me to get into my 10 favorite moments of History of the World Part 1. Here we go. Number 1 is masturbating cavemen. I mean, think about it. It's the opening scene. You know right away, this is a Mel Brooks movie. You know, you watch Blazing Saddles and you see people farting around the campfire, and now you have an opening Dawn of Man scene, and it's cavemen masturbating. I especially like the one guy who goes to town before he just passes out. And also, you gotta love that it was Orson Welles doing the voice to introduce the Dawn of Man with 2001, the Space Odyssey theme. Now I'm not gonna go in any order here. So my number 2 favorite scene is the nuns in bikinis. Here we have the Spanish Inquisition, and it's terrible, and suddenly it turns into this big, huge movie musicals with nuns suddenly ripping off their clothes and doing a huge dance number and synchronized swimming routine. I mean, let's face it, Mel, you can't talk them out of a joke here. Number 3, jumping to the end, Jews in space. Now, since both Jews and space are very near and dear to my heart, when this came on, I was like, is he talking to me? And you know what else made it so great? It actually came at the end of the movie, like past the credits. Like you actually thought the movie was over, and then you hear this voice of Mel Brooks going, hey everybody, where you going? And then he goes and gives you these extra scenes. And he even teases it. That's gonna be in History of the World Part 2. I wonder if they'll do it in the Hulu special. Number 4, it's good to be the king. I love the scenes about the French Revolution. You got Mel Brooks as the King of France and the Piss Boy, and they look alike. And I loved how, Mel was the French piss boy, and people would go up to him and say, do you have to pee? He'd say, oui, oui. And then, he'd hold the bucket and they'd go pee. That's Mel Brooks. In fact, there's so many great moments in the French Revolution, and I'm just doing my top 10 favorites, so I'm gonna have to save some of my moments for later on in this video. Number 5, the French Revolution. Here they are living in Versailles, and they're skeet shooting humans. I love that. And then they're playing chess with humans. And everyone has to jump the queen. Even the king jumps the queen. Like I said, it's good to be the king. Number 6 is Moses. Mel Brooks as Moses. Here he comes, bringing the 15 commandments down from the mountain, having just received them from God, accidentally dropping 5, which is how we end up with only 10 commandments. Did you ever see the movie And God Spoke where Soupy Sales plays Moses with the 10 commandments too? I thought that was the only other movie that began to become close to what Mel did. All right, next up is number 7. Actually, number 7 and 8 are going to be from the Roman Empire because that was a hilarious sequence. The first up is the eunuchs. They bring in all these men are eunuchs. They have a feather in front of them, and then they have the sexy dancer come out, and they see if the feather rises or stays the same, and that's how they know if they truly are a eunuch or not. Also, there's a really funny scene with Madeline Kahn where she's getting ready for an orgy, and she has to select her men for the orgy, and they come out, and she has to make some awfully big decisions. That also falls into number 7 because I just think that was hilarious too. Which leads me to number 8. Caesars Palace. Literally, Caesars Palace. I loved it. You had Comicus and Swiftus, and they get to go to Caesars Palace and go in front of the big emperor, played by Dom DeLuise. Like every A-list actor of the 70s is in Caesars Palace, and they are all on their A game. Number 9 is the cavemen and the invention of music. There was all those cavemen working on rocks. One of them gets stomped in the foot and screams, and then they realize if they cover his mouth and uncover his mouth, they got to make music out of it. So the next thing you know, there's an entire choir all getting their feet beaten on rocks. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. And number 10, my favorite part of History of the World Part 1 is all of the street vendor scenes. Columns, get your columns! You had so many gags in the street that, every time they cut to the street, there was something hilarious. There was actually Hugh Hefner as himself trying to convince Vestal Virgins that he has a new concept called a centerfold. You had all these street vendors. One of them is selling plumbing. Wipe the shit right out of your house! One of them is selling rats. And one of them just has nothing for sale.
Nothing. I got absolutely nothing for sale.
I told you at the beginning of this video that I would tell you about my encounter with Mel Brooks when I was in my 20s. And first of all, I don't want to say that I'm like super crazy obsessive about Mel Brooks or anything like that, but I will tell you this story. I was at a movie theater in Westwood. It's called the Avco. I don't think it's there at the time. And I went to see a movie with a buddy of mine, and the movie was called I Love You to Death or something. It wasn't, a great movie. It was like a comedy, whatever. And I'm sitting there waiting for the movie to start, and I turn around, and sitting behind me in the theater, by the way, crowded, is Mel Brooks. And sitting next to him is his wife, Anne Bancroft. And I'm thinking, holy crap. And I turn and I look at him and I can't believe it. And my buddy wasn't with me, he was getting popcorn. And I turn and I look again. And now he sees me looking at him and he says, yes. And I said, okay, yes, I'm a huge, huge fan of you and your wife. And he goes, oh, that's so nice. And he asked me where, what my name was, how old I was. I told him I was going to UCLA. I was a student there. I was a film student there. And actually we chatted for like 10 minutes, and I had told him I'd finished a student film, and he goes, here's what I want you to do. I want you to send me a VHS tape to my office in the Fox lot. I'd love to see it. And I did. And he wrote me back a letter, which I keep. I'm not going to show you because it's my own personal thing. And it was basically saying like, it was, nice to meet you and let's keep in touch, which I never did, because how could I possibly keep in touch with Mel Brooks? It was almost unbelievable. And that really happened. And that's the video, folks. If you like what you see, subscribe to the channel.
This is a big ending.